Well, hello, Amy. I'm Ed Parcaut. I'm here with Amy Tiemeyer, and we are helping the brave. How you doing, Amy?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing great. It's a new week. I'm still alive. I'm still kicking. I'm still doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. So what else?
I don't know. Kissed my grandkids this morning. It was all good.
Okay. Well, I didn't. I didn't kiss my grandson. He's up in Sacramento. Just a little update before we get to our guest. We're putting together the fire walk for veterans in Modesto. It's April 13th. And it's right now we have enough to have 100 veterans walk. We're trying to get that up to 300. So it's just about getting donations. We got a bunch of companies who want to donate to it. I'm talking not just locally, back east and everything, and they're already promoting it. It's going to get pretty big. So if you're a veteran, you want to come into Modesto and walk on fire, let us know. You want to bring our guest in? Do you know our guest, or is it somebody that was referred to us?
It was somebody that
You
was
sound like you
referred
really
to
knew him
us.
from the beginning. Yeah.
Right. But I do feel like I know him because he's an Air Force pilot, and I love that. So let's bring him in.
That's just because he's in the Air Force. I mean, my dad, my uncle's in the Air Force, but doesn't mean we know everybody. How you doing, Dom? How do you say your
Good.
last
Thanks
name?
for having me on your show.
How do you say your last name?
Teich.
Teich.
Yep.
And then your call sign is Slice.
Slice. Yeah, that's correct.
So I take it you must be in the Air Force. You were in the Air Force, and you were a pilot.
So I'm actually in the reserves now. I'm a full-time instructor pilot in the reserves. So I get the best of both worlds. As Amy was kind of alluding to before, the Air Force is definitely the best service to be in if you're a pilot. The name kind of implies it. But now I don't really have to move around. I think that's kind of the big kicker is that I moved 7 times in 10 years. And by year 12, 13, my wife was done with that.
I hear static somewhere.
So we actually, sorry.
I hear static. That's coming through someone's mic. It's better now.
Probably mine. Dom, he's saying me. So we always ask this question, which I love. Why did you choose the service you chose?
Well, so ironically, I was the 3rd year in college in my undergrad, and I was getting frustrated because things weren't going along as fast as I wanted them to. So I went and signed up to go in the Navy. Well, the morning that I was going to go drive and sign all the papers and everything, the Navy essentially was going to pay for my last year of college and then give me some change to like pay down some of my debt. I fell out of my bed that morning onto the floor, and I had a bunk bed at the time, and then my car wouldn't start. So like, praise God, I didn't end up going into the Navy, and I finished out my undergrad. Can you hear me okay? Is it still staticky?
Yeah, it's probably the connection to your mic. Sometimes when you use a really nice mic, they pick up some type of power relay. It's
How about
okay.
now?
It's okay. We'll take it out. But you just knocked the Navy, and I'm sorry, I was a Navy, and you're definitely not a Top Gun. So let's move on from there. They didn't. I don't think they made a movie that was a blockbuster about Air Force pilots, but I think they did about Navy pilots, but I'm not sure about that. And even a sequel like 30 years later, and it still did real well.
Yeah, still hitting the top of the list.
Yeah, but I mean, the Air Force was a division of the Army, so
they split it off.
Yeah,
but I wasn't prepped for that.
So in the Air Force, so my son went in the Army. He first went to the Air Force because I said, let's go check the Air Force out, what he wanted to be, a medic and airborne, that kind of stuff. And they wouldn't guarantee him what he could be. He went over to the Army, they guaranteed it, and that's why he's in the Army. It's a bigger service. But we picked the services for different reasons. And it's a sad thing that you picked the Air Force because you fell and your car wouldn't start.
I don't know. I think sometimes
that's what I heard. That's all I heard.
When the stars align, they just align.
Okay.
And I hear what you're saying, Ed, but I can appreciate like there's some outstanding pilots in the Air Force.
I'm sure there are. There's outstanding in everything. It's just, some
Regardless. Okay. So you joined the Air Force
Army or
because
Air Force, whatever.
Well, yeah. So I think the big thing was that the Navy hadn't guaranteed
Mhm.
a pilot position, and that's what I was going to college for. So I just finished out my last year of college, had a bunch of debt essentially, and then I started applying to go through officer training school. That's the only outlet that I'm aware of where once you sign up, you know what you're going into. So you apply, you interview, you do all the testing, and then they say, hey, you've been selected to go to pilot training. In my case, they said, what are your top 3? And I put pilot, pilot, and pilot. And they said, you can't do that. And I said, if you don't give me a pilot slot, I'm not going into the military because I'm already a pilot. I'm a civilian pilot. I'm a civilian instructor. I have all my commercial ratings. I'm going to go fly for the airlines. I want to fly airplanes. I don't want to sit in the back and do other things. No offense to those people. That's what I had put my mind to. So,
and
that's where I went.
And that's what you have to do when you're joining the military. You have to get it in writing. You have to get it guaranteed, whatever your position is, because I've heard too many stories where people haven't, and they're hating life because of that. And if you don't get it guaranteed, don't sign up for it. Don't go in.
Yeah, there was a guy in my same shoes who was a civilian instructor pilot. Went through college to do that. When he applied, he put pilot, navigator, and then air battle manager in that order. Well, they didn't pick him up for a pilot slot. They picked him up for a navigator. He's already a civilian pilot. So fast forward 5 years, he did the navigator thing and then eventually got picked up for a pilot slot. And I was his instructor pilot in jet training when he went through the pipeline 5 years later. So he was 5 or 6 years behind me just because of what he put on the form when he first signed up.
Actually, it's what they had the need for at the time.
Yeah,
technically, that's how they say it, whoever they are. All right, so what year did you join?
06.
Okay, and then you were in for how long?
I've been active. I was active for over 13 years, and then I've been an active full-time reservist. For the last whatever. I'm bad at public math. Maybe the last 4 or 5 years, coming up on 5 years now.
Okay, and you still do commercial piloting too?
So I still have all my. I'm not actively flying for an airline. However, I did get hired by American Airlines, but I'm flying for the military right now. But all of my certificates, airline transport pilot stuff, like all that stuff is still good to go.
So you're flying for the military. Are you training full time? I mean,
yes. Yeah. Okay. So we're out here in Phoenix at Luke Air Force Base, and if it's not the largest fighter jet base in the world, it's in the top 3 for sure. But it's a schoolhouse. So everybody that comes in is either going through an instructor pilot upgrade to stay as a permanent party and be an instructor here, or you're a student. So you're either getting first time qualified in the F-35 or the F-16, or you're getting requalified, or you're doing a transition course. So we have, a bunch of A-10 pilots that are coming in right now that are getting their transition course into another aircraft.
So you're no longer in the service, but I know you're reserve. But in this capacity, you're a civilian person teaching everybody. Is that what you're doing, or
nope? I'm still in. I am. The easiest way that I understand this, the only difference between what I was in active duty and the reserves is that I get paid from a reserve bucket of money. That's it. I'm still on active orders. I can still be deployed.
Okay, so you're on active orders. I didn't know if you're on active orders. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I thought you were just
been
in
on active
reserves
orders
and doing something. Okay, gotcha now.
Yep.
Right, I follow.
But then I do have a real estate business on the side, and I've written some books and compiled fighter pilot stories and done some other stuff as well.
Is that the wisdom behind you? I can't read the first word above your book on your book.
Yep, Single Seat Wisdom is the book series. We're getting ready to publish the 3rd volume here on Veterans Day.
Nice. Right. So let me ask you one question before we move on to what you're kind of doing now. Is the Air Force still really needing pilots?
Yes. So the Air Force pipeline for pilots got backed up for a ton of different reasons. And then they being the people that manage personnel, as well as, well, it's not any one thing. A lot of people like to point to one thing, but we lost a lot of pilots in about 2000. 14, 15, 16 time frame, a lot of guys ended up going out to the Guard or the Reserve, or they went to the airlines, or they just left altogether. So retention was a big issue. And then there was a bunch of other issues, but the pipeline to make pilots got backed up. So we fell behind, we as a service. And actually, this isn't just Air Force, it's all of the services for pilot training. They're all backed up. And so we fell years behind in pilot production, essentially. And then COVID kicked off, and it exacerbated the problem. I want to say it's like 2 times as bad now in the last 3 years. And then you guys are probably aware, the ability for the military to recruit and retain right now is at historical lows.
Yeah, they're way behind on what they need. So yeah. One, it's that generational thing too, right now.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I wish it was one thing, because that's
Right,
a lot of guys
stuff,
we would have generals come in and talk to us, and they would have, these steering committees and these special groups they'd put together and be like, well, what do we do to get you guys to stay? And one guy's idea would be like, we just need a full-time masseuse in the squadron. And I'm like, dude, that's not that's not it. Maybe it's part of it, but dude, that's not it. Or we need a bigger bonus. We need a bigger pilot bonus once our commitment's up, because you got to compete with the civilian sector. And I'm like, dude, I still don't think that one thing is it. Because if you're going to get deployed for 6 to 9 months to a year, there's no amount of bonus money in my shoes right now that you're going to give me to put me away from my family for another year. Because I've already done that. I've done it for years. In fact, I was 12 years in the service before I was actually with my family more than half the time. So there's so many competing arguments and reasoning behind it. But the bottom line is that we're just way behind, and there's a huge pilot shortage. And it's not like making a services officer or something like that, where they can go to a technical school and like 6 months later, have a person that's actually doing work. I mean, pilot training itself is a really drawn out. It's not drawn out. It just takes a long time to get through it.
And it takes a unique individual to do it.
It does. At McCord, so I'm at right outside of Joint Base Lewis McCord.
Okay.
And I'm a part of the leadership here, and so they tagged me to do things with the community. And so what they did is a thing where they took us from McCord, we took a C-17 down to Texas first to meet all the junior airmen that were going to work on C-17s. Then I want to say we went to Louisiana, which was pilot training, and then Oklahoma, which was pilot training specifically to the C-17. And it was really interesting, all the changes since COVID and all the ways in which the Air Force is trying to get more pilots and different things like that. It was amazing to me, mind-blowing on what pilots have to go through on like this one thing, like they were throwing different colored balls, and the person had to put the different colored balls in the different things and answer questions about what was going wrong with their aircraft at the same time.
Yeah.
And
I thought there was going to be a question here, Amy.
sorry,
Not a statement.
This
is about Dom, not about your traveling.
Thing, like with what he's saying, with the challenge of being a pilot, in that it's not just normal training and different things like that. But I will leave that go. We can pivot.
Yeah. I know a lot of pilots in my Rotary and other stuff, because they became pilots because they got tired of traveling through cars for their business and other stuff, and the write-off that they get for buying an airplane is really good. And so they all became pilots so that they could do that. So I see the other side of it too. And I mean, that's not a jet, of course. That's those little whatever they are, Cessnas or whatever, but it's another way of, and they go through the schooling and all that stuff, but it's totally different what you guys go through. Now, does the Air Force have kind of like a Top Gun that we've seen everything in the movies about? Is there something like that too?
Yeah, it's called the Weapons Instructor Course, or WIC is kind of the general term for it. It's actually this is not meant as a jab, but it's actually a more robust course. It's longer, and the pilots they go through a lot more than Top Gun school. Not a jab at the Marines or Navy. It's just the way it is.
It's really the Navy, but
yeah,
it's okay. It's just the only reason people know about Top Gun is because of the movie back in the 80s when it first was filmed at Miramar, and I was down there at that time and around all that when that was going on, and so that's how I knew it, and then they got moved to Fallon, Nevada, and so everybody's like, who the hell wants to be a pilot anymore in the Navy if I got to be out here in the desert, not in San Diego?
Yeah. I was actually just at Miramar back in August and got to hang out with a bunch of the pilots. All of them are helicopter pilots, or not all of them, but a large amount of them. And then there's obviously still the F-18 schoolhouse there as well, but it's kind of a mixed bag now.
Yeah, because they took El Toro, moved it down there for the Marines.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why, because that was the Marine Air Base, El Toro. And again, it's just because everything grew so close around everything. They had to get all of the planes out of there for Miramar because everybody was complaining about them going over their houses and everything else. Gotcha. And that's why that all changed. So
yeah, I mean, the departure is right over Torrey Pines. I mean, you just go ripping over Torrey Pines at 400 or 500 feet on the departure. And I like the scenery personally.
Yeah. I could tell. Yeah. The Torrey Pines people teeing off don't like you, but that's beside the point.
No, maybe they do. I don't know.
All right. So where were you deployed when you were in? Can you talk about it or?
I mean, yeah, it's Middle East primarily. So Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, ended up in Turkey at one point.
Now, were the bases actually there, or were you because we've had some helicopter pilots on and they were outside. There was 4 different bases they were at.
No, the bases are there. Yeah. There's bases in Jordan, Iraq, Kuwait, Afghanistan. Yeah. So boots on the ground and then wheels up over different countries, depending on what was going on.
And this is a stupid question, but is there air in the air? Not like air you breathe, but air conditioning and heating, all that stuff in the jets, like everything else, or is it's your suit itself that does all that?
It's built in. It's not a stupid question. It's built into the airplane. I will say the F-16 is what I fly, and it's not amazing. If the jet's not on, you're not getting any air conditioning, so it's pretty hot. And then if you can imagine parking a huge chunk of metal on the ramp in the desert under the sun, it takes a while to cool the jet down. So you'll probably be airborne 30-45 minutes before the jet cools down. And then, the air conditioning will start cooling you down as well.
So it's kind of like where you are now.
Yeah. Out in Phoenix.
Yeah. Not as bad almost, but it has its moments. It's not this year round, but yeah.
This morning I woke up early. I mean, it's almost November, right? And I was, I planted a palm tree this morning right as the sun came up and I was sweating bullets. It's still in the high 80s here. And Amy, I was actually talking to my aunt. She lives in North Idaho up in the Post Falls area, Coeur d'Alene, if you're familiar. And I just got off the phone with her about 30 minutes ago and she said it's dumping snow. It's just crazy to see the differences in climate.
Yeah, we went from the 90s to 70s, and we'll be in the 60s in a few days. So I'm in Modesto, California.
Okay.
So my area is over Idaho. It's Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Alaska. But Montana and some Idaho, northern Idaho, dumps. I feel like it's all year round. Like maybe there's 3 weeks it doesn't.
Wow.
But that is it. And it's crazy.
My son just left Alaska because he was stationed up there, and he's like, "I'm so tired of the snow. We're done." And when he first got up there, he was so happy because he's a snowboarder. Well, COVID when he got there, and so they were locked down for so long in the barracks. So,
see, and when I was in the Army, I was Fort Drum, home of the Frozen Chosen, and because I'm so short, I know you can't tell this, but they would plow kind of between our barracks and headquarters, and I would just arrive because nobody could see me coming because of the snow berms. So they used to call me Private Arriving.
I think that would
Call
be
it a call
rude.
sign.
Yeah, that's their call sign. Private arriving.
Well, it's better than being thrown in the bank and being called like Private Pile or something like that.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I was always arriving.
All right, so now you're writing. So you're still doing what you're doing. You're active duty, active, in the reserves, and
Yep.
then you write books. What else do you do?
Yeah, so we write books and we give
You say
the
we.
single seat.
Who's we?
There's 50 fighter pilots now. So single seat wisdom, the series, we have 50 short fighter pilot stories in these books. And with that business, it's called Single Seat Mindset. It's essentially just to give back and to kind of help people with how fighter pilots think. It's very leverageable, and that it didn't start out that way at all. But that business we started, and then we give all of that money to a children's cancer nonprofit. So that's kind of where we're at there. The other side of the house, my other real estate business is called Viper Ventures LLC, and essentially I started that because I grew up. My dad owned a bunch of real estate, and then I started buying single family homes and got kind of frustrated with that because it was one at a time. So I decided to buy an 8-unit property, and then kind of the rest is history there. But a lot of my fighter pilot buddies wanted to know how they could invest in real estate without really having to do all of the nitty gritty work. So that's kind of how I got into apartment syndication is what it's called. And then I wrote a book essentially to help people that wanted to invest in the company. So that's where the books, the websites and all that stuff, that's where it started. And then I leveraged that to start Single Seat Mindset for a completely different reason. But that company is just really to give back. I more or less feel like I've lived the biggest life that I could, and granted, it's still great, but I would really like to see other people be able to do that too, especially people that want to be pilots or fighter pilots. Like I said, it's the fighter pilot mindset thing is I've heard from business owners and entrepreneurs and athletes, and they're like, man, this is very, very applicable to peak performing professions.
It's a totally different. It's like any of the extreme stuff, right? Because that's what you guys are extreme. I don't care. It's not like you're flying, people from Honolulu to San Francisco or something. It's like you do some amazing stuff, and that's the difference with that whole group. Back to your syndication, I know a lot about that because I've been involved with a lot of different things over my history, and that's why I run a radio show called Real Estate Jerky. We give you something to chew on, and we have people come on and talk about that stuff all over the country, not just locally, but all over now. And it's amazing how many people and how big that is. I Brandon Turner. Yeah, I know him, and he's been on a couple of my stuff, and it's all about the fact of how many doors you have and everything you're trying to do for the future. Because everybody got out of the single family home, that was not really supposed to be investment for everything, but it's supposed to be, the starting, and then everybody got into the different apartment complexes and other stuff, and that's really where it's at.
So I have a question, and it could be for either of you, Ed or Dom, because I think this is where I think understanding money mindset and even in the veteran space, right? Understanding these concepts are what's complicated. So, going from a family that maybe didn't talk about money, didn't have the best money management or whatever, doing better, but not necessarily understanding sustainability or it's not called reoccurring wealth, but wealth for your children. Sure. Isn't, I think, in that single home. Like, it's not about me buying a house for my kid. It's about maybe buying a duplex or something else that gives that kid a place they could stay if they wanted to, but it's also that passive income, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what the not understanding how money works comes in.
I mean, from a parent's perspective, I'm not giving my kids any real estate. I'm not going to hand them anything because it's a crippling mindset. They've got to earn it. So, I mean, my kids have already, The oldest two have already invested. They invested in one of my first properties. Now it's a kind of a fictitious investment, but they were, 5 and 3 years old. So it's very tough to take $20 and say, hey, you're going to invest $10 in this, and you're going to give 10% to whatever charity or church. And then, oh, by the way, you now have $9. And this is how life works. You make $100, 50 of it is going to go to investment. 10% of it you're going to give away, because if you can't give 10% of $100, how do you give a 10% of $1 million? And then you've got 40% left to just blow it on whatever you want, or save.
Hold on. You forgot the 28% for the tax man.
Well, so if
you got $100, you got to take the taxes off that first, then you have the rest of it to invest and everything else.
Assuming you're not running real estate and having a world-class tax person reduce that taxable income.
You were talking to your kids about actual income, not about how investment and everything else, because I deal with a lot of people build multifamily properties, and I help them buy stuff for themselves. And they are just like what everybody complained about Trump and how he offset his income into other properties going forward. That's exactly what you do when you're building stuff and other stuff. It's legal. And I won't call it loopholes. It's not. It's legal the way they do it. And I had people who they made $5 million, but they show like they have no money at all.
Yep. And that's and somebody asked me about that recently, and I said it really depends on what you want to do. If you don't have W-2 income and you're looking to get a loan, with a commercial loan, you can't have zero income, because they're going to look at your tax returns and they're not going to give you the loan. So you then need to either raise the money through syndication, or you need to have a big gob of money. So it really depends on where you're going. I'm more of the mindset that kind of goes a little bit like, you're not entitled, or you're not required to pay 1 cent more in taxes than is legally required. Right. So don't pay. I mean, you shouldn't be paying taxes just to pay taxes to make you feel good. It's not a good virtue signaling thing to do. Use that money to reinvest it, do whatever you can. It kind of back to my kids and like the handouts. I think that's just so crippling, to get handed a bunch of stuff but not really know how it's built. I'm not saying that they won't inherit it, but there's going to be a lot of learning that happens before they just get, boom, house gets plopped into their lap. And yeah.
But let me push back on the taxes. Taxes are supposed to, from what I understand, and I know Ed, you and I disagree on this, they are supposed to be for schools and roads and things.
No, they're not.
Are supposed to contribute to.
No, they're not. They're not supposed to be.
We
never paid taxes until they told us we had to pay taxes. So don't make it
up.
Just because a politician goes,
roads until
this is how it's going to be. We're going to tax you, and we're going to use that money for roads and this and that, and then we won't use it at all for roads. We're going to give it for homeless people in California. And now we have 170,000 more homeless people than we ever had it before. So don't get me started on this whole tax bullshit, because I could be here for an hour. I understand what you're saying. We're supposed to help, yes, to a certain point, but the problem is they don't put it where it's supposed to be.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but I also feel like there's not a vehicle to help certain demographics. And I'll give an example. Okay, so my youngest
See what you got into, Dom? So
what's that?
See what you're getting into?
Oh, I love it.
All right,
a lot of these types of shows won't get into the nitty gritty and push back on stuff. So I'm enjoying this.
Yeah. Okay, well,
I'm a challenger, so let's do it.
I do talk radio, so I have no problem with
it. So my youngest, his name is Javon. We got him when he was 15, right? His dad was a Navy corpsman, passed when he was 2. So he's part of the demographic of Family of the Fallen. Mom did not want him. So anyhow, so
I'm trying to get to where this has to do with taxes.
So
we only have a half hour show.
He did something to him that landed her in jail. 4 months she was in jail. For 4 months, this child, who was 15 years old, did breakfast and lunch at school, at his high school, which is the high school that Sage went to. And without those programs that come from tax dollars, he would not have been fed.
But those are actual federal dollars. I get it, what you're saying, because I think it's
from taxes.
Norway. So what they do is they tax the people who use the public services. So the people who make the less are taxed the most because they use those services. The people who don't use those services aren't taxed for those services.
Well, that's the same here, because if rich people know all the loopholes,
okay,
that is the same
it's not
in my mind.
Okay, there is the poor people do not pay anywhere if you add it all up close to what rich people pay for taxes. Yes, here's the deal: make it a flat tax, 10%. Nobody would bitch. Everybody would pay, except for the people who are poorer, and they'd say, "I have to pay 10%." So does everybody.
Okay, but so if we put your truth to the side, say I validate.
No, I want my real truth always here
for just a second. But in my world, where I work with kids, the lowest common denominator pays the most in my experiences, right? So I look at kids like him, and I've seen them time and time again, where they are the ones that are benefiting from these programs that a lot of people hate. They're like, oh my God, why should I pay for that? To me, how would that funding come in any other way? Because it's not coming in any other way.
Did you want to reach out here? Did you want to add to this, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, you can, raising money is there's no loop to it. You raise money, you need to raise more money. Whereas a business, if you start a business and get that machine rolling, you can generate money. So there's other ways to raise money. It's called printing money. It's called inflation. That's the best hidden tax that you could possibly get. So if you want to talk about rich people, I mean, I think that's maybe a negative connotation, but you don't have to be like, people say, well, you're filthy rich. And like, why'd you say filthy? I mean, this guy may be rich because he worked to get there, whether he was a self-made man or he inherited a business or what have you. But inflation, if you want to raise money, you don't have to tax. Really don't have to tax anybody. Just reference the last 3 years. Everything is twice as much. Everything costs twice as much now through inflation. And those aren't like specific numbers. But if I go to the gas pump, why am I paying $5 a gallon in Arizona? I mean, I get it if I'm in California or in some of these other states.
No, don't get it. I don't want to I don't want to pay it.
Yeah, I don't want to pay that. And the only reason behind it is everything costs more now. It's called inflation. It's the biggest hidden tax that the government has on its public. So if you're Republican and you want to reduce taxes, well, then you can just build money through the printing presses. And if you're on the other side, you can enact policies, and the policies have, I mean, I'm seeing it here on our street level too. And I just was out in San Diego a couple of times the last few months. The homeless there, the homeless problem there is bad, but I drive in downtown Phoenix because I have properties in central Phoenix, and the homeless problem is here too. Mm-hmm. And it was not like that. We didn't have tent cities 3 years ago. So what's changed?
The boomer generation sold their houses and they started renting, and now they can't pay for their rents, and now they're on the street. The issue with California is we spent $20 billion to fix the homeless population, and it actually increased. What's the matter, Amy? You can't be part of this conversation now because it's a feature narrative. Here's the thing about everybody says tax the wealthy. They can pay their more fair. They can pay, and they write off all the stuff. The problem is, if you look at the tax brackets that they set these people up, they're 50%. You could be 45-50% of my income to go to taxes.
Okay.
Why is that fair? Why is that fair?
Okay.
Because I work my ass off. I have to pay 50% where somebody else gets to pay 12%.
Okay, first off, I guess I didn't hear the solution to helping the kids who aren't taxpayers.
Yeah, well, the solutions are if everybody paid their fair share. I'm talking all the way down. Just do a flat tax of 10%. Okay, here's the thing. The issue isn't revenue problem for taxes. The problem is a spending problem. We're giving $110 billion to other freaking countries. We gave Ukraine $118 billion already, right? Or whatever that number is, billion. I can't remember. It's so expensive. If we wouldn't have gave to all those people, we could have taken care of the homeless population 5 times over. We could have fixed all this stuff. We got to stop spending this money elsewhere and put it back to where we are here.
Okay. So
one last thing. We took all this money in for a gas tax and all this stuff in California, supposedly to make our roads better. Our roads are the worst fucking roads in the nation because they spent the money on other things. I'm done.
Okay. So for me, what I'm saying is I don't necessarily disagree with the 10% if everybody paid 10%. That would almost, fairness is a thing for me. I am not against taxes because no other entity is truly stepping up. I have seen churches put signs in their parking lot, no overnight camping, different things like that. I have seen where I worry about the kids that I work with. And I have shared, I work with a local high school that has over 100 kids who experience homelessness and still choose to go to school. And it's because their school has a pantry. And it's because of these different things. So I'm not saying the way we're doing it is the best way. I'm saying I'm for some taxes because I see it as the only way kids or marginalized populations can be supported, because I have not seen another thing. Like you talk about, if the VA went to an insurance, and I'm like, that is amazing. That makes sense to me. I have never heard anybody go, this is how we're going to help kids who have food disparity, food insecurities and different things across the board in every state really well. I've never heard that solution.
So, okay, food insecurity. So is that when my grandson comes up and says he's hungry or someone's hungry, that's what that means is that's I don't like that food insecurity. I don't like the shaming words that people use. If I tell you I feel a certain way today because I'm tired or whatever, I'm not shaming you about how I feel. It's about me. It shouldn't be about you. You shouldn't make what I'm telling you about me about you. That's the problem. That's narcissism. And that you guys, that young generations that's doing all that shit needs to wake the fuck up and understand, hey, it's not about you. Get a job and move on. Am I done?
Okay, I'm going to just let you know, Javon had a job all through high school and he has a job through college.
I didn't say, first of all, that your son, right, that you had, his dad passed away and he was a corpsman. He should have been taken care of by our government because of that guy gave his life for whatever happened while he was in the military. Should have been taken care of for the rest of his life. Never needed a dime to go to school, be fed, or anything else. That's the problem with our country, not taking care of our veterans the way we take care of other people who come in, illegals and migrants and all those other people are coming in, where we give them food and shelter and places. They kick veterans out of hotels in New York to put migrant people in there, or whatever they call the people that are coming across the border right now. That's a problem. We need to treat our veterans better and take care of the families better, period.
Okay. So we'll bring this back to you, Dom. How do people find your book? How do they get connected with you? I think it's really amazing. 50 Pilots, the single mindset. I love that.
Yep. It's singleseatmindset.com. We'll call it the runway that goes off into the wild blue yonder. But up at the top there, you can find the book. They're getting ready to publish, as well as the website that have the other books as well. Singleseatmindset.com or Single Seat Fighter Pilots. And you can find it there.
Sorry about that, but just I get tired of everybody telling that we need to pay more in taxes. It's ridiculous, and I'm just tired of that. That's not the answer. The answer is to do better with the revenue we have, period. Because I can tell you that's why Modesto, California, our city has always been asking for more money. Even in the good times, they're always asking for more money. They haven't looked at how to fix problems where they're wasting it.
Yeah, I mean, it's at every level, Ed, to your point. I mean, in the military specifically, there's the end of year funds that quote, unquote, must be spent. And if you don't spend them, then your budget gets cut for the next year. So there is no incentive, even within the military ranks at the squadron level, 30, 40, 50, 60 people. Well, what about the battalion level? What about the regiment level, if you're not incentivizing cost cutting measures, or not even cost cutting measures, just don't buy crap you don't need. And so at the end of the year, when you got all this slush fund essentially, and there's 27 days and everybody's running around like the sky's falling, what do we need to buy? The answer is nothing. You should incentivize that squadron commander to hand the money back and to, you know, keep his budget or whatever. And it should be more of a, what do you need? There isn't a like a barometer. There isn't a level that says, hey, you need this much money based on what your squadron is doing, or there isn't a formal process to ask for money if there isn't a budget. It's just, hey, my budget is $100,000 this year. If I spend 90 next year, it's 90 grand. Well, how does that keep up with inflation and everything else that's going on? That's ridiculous. What if your squadron downsized? What if you don't need the money and they just blow it? They literally just blow the money on stuff that is not mission essential. And it's cool stuff, like maybe some new chairs and computers and stuff, but it's like, did we need that? What happens if at every single level of government, specifically, because the government spends a lot of money, and I would say that they don't even spend it very well. What happens if at every single level, everybody had that mindset and we flipped it versus let's spend all this money? I mean, that could free up a lot of money to go to these other problems. And the thing is, Amy, I don't think there's any one thing. Like there isn't like we need to do this one thing and then we've got all of homelessness gone, right? Which I think I wish there was a switch for that, because in our country, specifically United States, because I've been to a lot of the other really crappy countries around the world, we got our own problems. I get it. But there's no reason anybody should be homeless in the United States or hungry. I mean, there's more. I mean, go look at a dumpster, because I worked at a big restaurant when I was in college. Open the dumpster behind a restaurant, one restaurant, and look at how much food is literally wasted every single day. I think there was I read something about travelers this year will throw away over 40% of the food that they're served because they don't have a place to put it. So I don't really know. I mean, I want to go, the one problem is X. I think that there needs to be a little bit more frugality, not penny pinching, because that can lead to other policies that maybe it's kind of like this. I'm going to buy a cheap tool to do what I need to do, and then I need to buy the same tool next year. Well, that's not what I'm talking about. Buy the right tools, and then if you don't need any tools, don't spend the money.
Run the government like a business, because
Boom.
if we're in a negative and we don't have the money, we go out of business. They should run the government the same way. If you're over budget, if you're this, you can't get reelected. Right? That's what Berkshire Hathaway guy, what's his name? The Omaha wizard guy, I can't think of, Warren Buffett. He's like, I got an easy way to fix all this. If they can't make GDP, whatever, you're anybody that's in Congress and Senate, whatever, can't be reelected next time. You never have.
Wouldn't that be great? Oh my God, wouldn't that be great?
But that's the
that
problem.
Would solve like term limits.
There's no incentive.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
And Amy, to your point, we're very fortunate to have some good schools around where we live. And so our kids get to go to a private school. Well, within that private school, there are kids that go there that don't pay. Right. And that's part of the business of being a private school, is that you look for funds. And granted, I get it. Some private schools accept, state funds or city funds and that kind of stuff. But from to kind of piggyback on Ed's pile-on, that if you run the stuff like a business, that's kind of what I had alluded to at the beginning, was what if you made it a business? How do you make that a business? And I don't know, because I'm not in that business, but I think if you did, then you could run it like an actual business and go, hey, we need some more money. Well, let's pump up this over here to generate some more revenue that funnels into our business, versus open hand, I need $100 more. Open hand the next day, oh, I need $200 more today, versus, hey, how do we pump up the business side of it? And I think that could be a very unique thing. And I'd be very surprised if it already isn't in place somewhere within the United States. There's got to be somebody that's running a business that's also feeding kids, that's also doing X, Y, and Z. or a nonprofit or something like that. You know, there's ways to monetize things through a business lens. And just kind of like my kids, my oldest daughter, very sharp. And she's already told me, she's 10 now, but at 6, she looked at me, she's like, Dad, I'm not going to college. And I was like, all right, I guess you're not going to college, but I'll be very surprised if she doesn't start her own. And so at 7, she said, Dad, I'm going to buy an apartment building. I'm going to live in the top. I'm going to rent all the rooms out. And on the bottom, I'm going to have a bakery. So then I only just have to commute downstairs to do my bakery. And then my bakery pays me money, pays for my room. And then all the people renting the building pay for the building. And I'm like, some people never even think of that. And you're 7. And so she's taking some of her investment dollars from years of investing in real estate, and she's going to buy a bunch of chickens because there is a big need. And granted, we have the property to build some chicken coops, and we're going to build up these chicken coops. She's going to run her little chicken coop, and it's great because I told her, I was like, I'm willing to support this, and I can help you build this. You're going to have to buy the chickens with your money and the feed and all that stuff. I'll show you how to set it up on a spreadsheet, but I get first dibs on the eggs.
Now, do they have to be air conditioned there? You have to put air conditioning in so the eggs don't boil? I'm not kidding.
So yeah, you're not kidding. And in fact, I wonder if we could just do hard-boiled eggs and not have to actually boil them.
I mean, they come out pretty warm, but because my grandparents had a dairy, and then when I was a kid, we raised everything. So yeah, I mean, we get hot during the summer, so you go out there in the morning and take them out in the morning because that's when they usually happen. But you can't leave them there at all anytime. They got to be taken out right away.
So it's so dry. It's so dry here in Phoenix. You just turn on misters. So you just mist water into the air, and it cools the temperature down 15, 20 degrees just by throwing water in the air. You can't obviously do that in Houston.
Is that what they tell you? I'm just kidding. I'm in California.
We have this. You walk, I mean, you've seen them, those Mr. patios.
We have them here. We have them here.
You're out in the sun and you walk under a Mr. patio. It is night and day difference. You feel like your skin is peeling off your face, and then you walk under there and you're like, okay, I can tolerate this. Sorry, Amy, I cut you off.
I was going to say, I'm in the Pacific Northwest where it rains a ton. So we have natural misters and no problem with feeling dry. I think that's great that your daughter is my youngest Sage. She is way more understands business than any of her siblings. And even Javon, to me, he's got a full ride scholarship, but he wants to be a nurse because that's what his dad wanted to be. But he works as a painter for Microsoft. And so, anyhow, it's, and I guess my point for the question was, is like, I feel like I'm not teaching incredibly well to my children to understand money mindset because it wasn't taught to me and I'm trying to learn it. But it's complicated because I think maybe to what you said, I'm trying to give something to give to them. And maybe that's where the problem with my mindset is.
So I've read several books on this, and I even look at it and I already had my preconceived notions before I started to research it. But the research shows that if you just give your children something, but they don't learn how to, so it's kind of like charity. If you give simple analogy, if you give a man a fish, he has a fish for a day. If you teach a man how to fish, he can fish for life. So how are you teaching them how to fish? And my belief is that prior to reading the books and researching it was that if I give you something, how do I know you're not going to just sell it and go buy a Corvette or fight over it or what have you? And there's a lot of value in that. So how do you teach them that? Well, I think it's just part of their upbringing. So my kids will ride in the cars sometimes and they'll be on a site where there's guys swinging hammers. And I used to do that. I don't do it anymore because I don't have the time for it. But what does it take to run a business? And it's more of an example piece. But you can play cash flow, the Robert Kiyosaki game. You can play Monopoly. You can just do simple things with them that go, hey, well, you're going to make this money, but what are you doing with it? How do you take your money? And as I don't remember the Shark Tank guy's name, but he's like, my dollar bills are like soldiers, and I send them out every day, and they bring more soldiers back. So what are you doing? And even even with their vocabulary, it's super important. Because if you look at veterans, and this is not a dig at all veterans, right? But there is a little bit of an entitlement mentality that can be fostered within the veteran community, even because our pay is called an entitlement. Even if you look at your leave and earning statement on the top, it says you're entitled to all of this kind of stuff. I don't believe, just like Slap Goldsworthy, he's one of the fighter pilots that wrote a chapter in Single Seat Wisdom Volume 1. His grandfather said that you are not entitled to anything that you don't earn. So when you step in the door as a first-term airman, soldier, what have you, the first day you're being told that you're entitled to all this stuff. I'm like, you didn't earn jack. You need to work and you need to earn that. So maybe changing the words. I think the vocabulary on how you look at money. And then also I found a lot of it, I had to change from how I was raised. It was a very Depression era mindset, pinching pennies and buying junk when you could, buy a tool or something like that, kind of going back to what I said earlier. But a lot of even my problems are how I think about money. And so I think, to steal kind of from Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because a lot of people kind of start out their journey and that book turns their whole boat upside down. It's not, I can't do that. It's how can I do that? So just giving your brain that ability to just go, well, why not? What is preventing me? Other people have done it. I mean, there's very few things nowadays. I mean, I'm not talking, you don't need to be Elon Musk and make a civilian rocket company or be your car, distributor and make that from scratch. But hey, there's other people that have done that. So a lot of times I find that if I sit back and I go, it seems really difficult or whatever, then I go, well, why not? And you just give yourself permission to think about that and kind of run down that rabbit hole. And it may be wrong, but I think that's part of the human condition, is taking action is how we learn. And so for my kids, like, you don't beat yourself up too much about it. Just go, hey, what are some things that you want to do in your life? If you want to be a nurse, you're gonna probably be a W-2 employee for a while. But does he want to be a nurse and then own a business and own all the nurses? Does he? So I'm just saying, like, outside, and I'm more going towards your son that wants to do that because his dad was a corpsman, right? But does he want to be a nurse and be on the floor? But then kind of planting that seed and going, hey, so now you've been a nurse for 10 years. You're the floor chief or whatever the nurses use. Like, you're the man and you run all the nurses in the team. How would you start a business? Because people own businesses to do traveling nurses, to do all of these, it's here in Phoenix. How do you do that? And do you even want to do that? And by the way, here are some of the resources for that. But a lot of it is, it's mindset. It's right up here in, between your eyeballs, the gray matter. It prevents you, and it prevents me a lot of times from making more money, just because of your preconceived notions and not giving yourself that permission to go, why not? What's preventing me from starting a business? Start it. It's probably going to be a disaster. Even if that business fails, it doesn't mean you're a failure. You just failed at that business. You learn something, maybe pick yourself up and start over. The Israelis are pros at this. Failure is actually praised in their culture. If you're an Israeli, you do a startup, you fail, you do another startup. You just keep starting and walking. It's like a kid. If they fall down, they get back up again. So in our culture, we're a very W-2 employee type of culture. We're a very be part of this business, don't start your own business type of culture. If you look at Facebook, this is the last thing I'll say because I got on a rant. But if you look at Facebook and a guy gets hired by an airline, the amount of likes and thumbs up and heck yeah, dude, that's awesome is through the charts. If somebody starts a business, it's like want, cool, dude, like neat. But the business, the family owned businesses died, right? And Ed, and please fill in if this is wrong, but I feel like it died just shy of the Great Depression, when all of that stuff was more or less thriving. And then now we become part of these bigger companies, these corporations, and we just work within the corporation. But it's really difficult if 90% of people in the US do that and you're part of that 10%. It's just different. And so you kind of have to be willing to step out there and be seen and fail and learn and get back up again.
That's why I do the podcast, Inner Edison, because it's about your failures. Our greatest accomplishments come from our greatest defeats, and you have to learn from them and keep moving forward. And that's why I do that podcast. But there are more. I mean, there's more small businesses who have people, and there's more people out there who have businesses, and more people who are into real estate now than any other time in history, just because of what we went through. And so the question is, how's it going forward from here? But if you look back, and was really the end of the boomers into the X-Gen, they didn't have their kids work. They went to high school. They didn't work. They didn't do this. They had a really easy life. And the problem is those kids didn't benefit from anything because now they think it's too hard to do. And there was some girl who just posted that she just got out of college and now she's working 9 to 5 and she can't spend any time with her friends and she doesn't know how it's going to help. This whole, it's like, she's like, I get home from work and I can't even do anything. My friends are tired. It's all over. It was all over news today. And it's like, that's the problem in the society we're living in when it's, like you said, entitled. And they think they're entitled when you're not entitled to anything. There was 2 things my dad taught me: life's not fair and how to duck. The second one's a longer conversation. But the most important thing is life's really supposed to be not fair for you. Not everybody you have to make it. It's go figure out what you want to do in life and do it. You have the same opportunity as everybody else in the United States. And if it wasn't the fact, we wouldn't have so many people coming here to start, from other countries to have a better life. We have so many, the immigrants do so well in our country now, just like they did when they came through Ellis Island, because they want a better life. The problem is our kids, our people here are so entitled. They don't want to work hard. And that's some of the biggest problems. So if you're teaching your kids what you're teaching your kids, and that's where it's at, it's teaching the young, it's getting back to the kids in grade schools and elementary, all the way through to high school, changing that mentality. So we go through, but this is what happens. The pendulum is so, hard times make hard people, weak times make, easy time make weak people. And that's what we just went through. And we got to, that's swinging back the other way pretty soon there, as you can tell by
including your
mic carried away.
So yeah, I built my home office because I'm removing my office and I didn't want to set it up, and so I don't have my really nice stands hooked up yet. So that's why my hand hit this. Anyway, so we could talk for another hour, but that's to fix the homeless thing, to fix those things, and to fix the food stuff. It's not our government, and that's the problem. You got to stop thinking our government's there for that. I'm a capitalist. I want the smallest government and get the hell out of my way, and I'll help people. I'm in Rotary. I'm helping people. This year was about veterans, helping veterans, and all the way through any way we can. And that's why we're doing a fire walk for veterans on April 13th, just to get them out of their funk, whether it's PTSD, whatever it is, to get them on the other side. Oprah, if you know anything about fire walking, Oprah Winfrey did it, because the guy that is running it for me, he was Anthony Robbins' guy for 15 years, and he was there during stuff. And he's like, if you watch her after she walks through and how she changed her life and changed everything about her company, and it changed everything for her. He goes, I want to do that for veterans, and he's a vet, and so that's why this is going to be the first one in the United States. So
nice,
yeah. So feel free to fly in. You can fly in Modesto. I'm doing a training mission today.
Hey, boss, you remember that, $100,000 that you couldn't spend at the end of the fiscal year? Can I just borrow one of these jets out on the ramp?
Well, it's not that far from you. You're not that far from us.
It sucks driving because it's about 5.5 hours from here, but it's like a 37-minute flight.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and you can, so we're doing it. We're going to get, we'll pull people from Sacramento, Bay Area down to Bakersfield here, and it's going to get pretty big. And we're trying to get, the people locally and get the veterans here, and then go out from there, but we'll see what happens. So that's all I have.
Update on that. You doing it every year?
This will be the first one. They were trying to put one together on the East Coast, and they had some issues because they got the fire people. I'm surprised that we've gotten as far as we've gotten with it, because we're in California. Because you got to tell them it's a ceremonial fire. It's not anything else, and so they'll allow it. But I got to get the sheriff involved. I got to get so many other people involved, because they're all veterans too, which helps.
Nice.
Yeah. But no, the thing is, this is not the first one. This is just the starting of it. I want to get pretty big to where that is one way to help. There's so many different things. That's why we started this podcast, was to help veterans get through their issues. And there's so many different ways to do that, not just one thing. And what Amy was talking about before is I think the VA should go away and we should all have insurance, and it should be 100% coverage, better than anything else, where you can take it to any place at all to get taken care of, because then you can get the top doctors, the top everybody, not what we get through the VA system.
Yep.
Yeah. And they can do it. They got Medicare, Medicaid right now. So why can't they do that?
Yep.
All right. Anything else before we go? Because Amy's looking tired over there, or mad.
So if they listen this far, they can go to singleseatmindset.com/podcast gift. It's all one word. It's all lowercase. First 3 people to go there, singleseatmindset.com/podcast gift. I'll send them a free copy of our first volume of Single Seat Wisdom. If you are a type of person that is entitled, you're not going to like the book. So if you want to live a bigger life and you're taking action and you want to learn how fighter pilots learn and see how they debrief and learn some of that mindset to help you live a bigger life, the book's for you. But it specifically says within the book who it's for and who it's not for. And it's people that are looking for a handout. It won't resonate with you. I'm not saying that I won't send you one of the books, but it may turn you off.
No, well, most people are going to listen to this as veterans, and other people are connected veterans, so they're it's totally different. You know, they're not usually entitled as much. There are those exceptions to the rule, but
sure.
I'd like to get a copy myself. So let me know 100%. Where I can buy it.
Don't sign up on that. I'll just send you one.
I just did already.
Oh well,
I messed it up. I didn't do it.
Well, so we got Ed and Amy are getting a book.
Yeah. All right, and then we're at an hour now, so let's get out of here. But don't run away, Dom. I want to ask you a few more questions. Okay. Amy, did you want anything to say before we go?
Thank you for your service. Thank you for all your insights and for having conversations with us. I appreciate that a lot. And thank you those out in the land, like what we do. I hope you found this was very interesting.
Say goodbye,
Thank
Dom.
You. Appreciate it. Goodbye, guys.
All right. And if you want to reach out to Dom, you can find it's singleseatmindset.com /podcast. Was that what it was?
So singleseatmindset.com is the main website, then /podcast gift.
Okay. There, we said it, and now you have it. All right. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for what, I want to thank both of you for being here. I want to thank everybody for what you do and what we're here for. I can't even talk now. I need to go home. Just best thing you can do to support us is subscribe to our YouTube channel and let other people know about us. And again, thank you so much for being here, both of you, and thank you for listening.